Did you know that one of the most powerful tools that can help you create positive change in your life is the use of metaphors? Metaphors can be extremely impactful and actually help you become more successful in multiple areas of your life. Your brain has evolved to understand and take in metaphors as a way to help break down complex information. So metaphors are both an excellent way to learn and teach, and they also help you internalize information better. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, a board licensed coach who has been helping people just like you create positive, lasting change in their health, wealth, and relationships for well over 10 years. Jane Hirschfield said, "Metaphor is the generative force for both poetry and science." Learning to use metaphors in life can help you solidify changes in all areas, from your health to your wealth to your relationships and more. Alison Smith is an expert in helping people get unstuck. She's a coach, an author, and a speaker who uses the power of metaphor and nature to help her clients see massive breakthroughs and level up in their lives. In this episode, Alison and I discuss what happens when you're missing the forest for the trees, or as Alison puts it in her lovely Scottish accent, missing the wood for the trees. We also talk about how to lift your mind and spirit, how to make your problems solvable, and Alison will show you what to do when you can't specifically solve a problem, but you can shift your perspective. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Alison Smith. What is landscaping your life?
It's a process that I developed. It's about using nature's landscapes as metaphors for our lives. And it's just lots of different tools in the coaching problem solving toolkit to help you when you're struggling and don't know what to do.
Sounds extremely valuable. Lots of people struggling, lots of people not knowing what to do pretty much all of the time, myself included. And I'm very big on metaphors as well. I think everything is a metaphor for everything, and nature being one of the biggest ones. What are one or two of the metaphors that you find yourself coming to most frequently?
I suppose going around in circles is one of them. The book is called Can't See the Wood for the Trees. And the reason that was the title was that felt at the time to be the most frequent saying people come with. In terms of traveling globally, then it could be can't see the woods for the trees or can't see the forest for the trees. So we do need a bit of translation as to wherever you are in the world listening to this.
Yeah, missing the forest for the trees, I think, is how I would say it, or something like that. But definitely as a very, very common one. And as a coach, that's something that I often say, or as a podcaster, that's what this show is all about, is just offering a different perspective, because when you're too close, you don't see the full view of it. So what are the issues when you're writing your book? Right. There's so many issues. Like you said, people are stuck, people are this, but like when you try to narrow it down to a few things that you see popping up over and over and over, like what are the patterns that you've seen that you try to help people with?
I think it's making a decision. I think it's making a decision quite often. And interestingly, a lot of the processes I use, I don't need to know the situation we're applying it to. So I can get quite rude and say, I don't need to know the story. Let's park the story. Let's send a story on a coffee break, because the story is why we're where we are. We're really attached to it. The whole reason I got into metaphor was that I'm really attached to my story, and therefore find it really hard to take on other perspectives, because my story's right, and I've told my story to myself over and over, and I've justified why I'm stuck. So we'll send the specific issue away while we look at the patterns within nature. But I suspect a lot of it comes back down to making a decision, because quite often so when they can't see the wood for the trees, 75% of people are trying to see the wood, and yet they know they don't want to be in the wood. You see what I mean? So actually, I might be doing it metaphorically in somebody's mind, or we might be actually in a wood. And I can either be at the other end of the phone or with them. And I'll say, where do you want to get to? Oh, the other side of the wood. And they'll be able to point to where they want to get to. So why are you focusing on the wood? Why are you allowing yourself? So one of the common themes is people knowing what they want to do or where they want to get to, not moving towards it, and then allowing themselves to get distracted with the. So take yourself on a walk and just notice how you make decisions on your walk, because it could be, oh yeah, I want to go there, and then it's, oh, that path looks interesting. Let me go on that path. And or we talk ourselves out of, oh, well, that's the long route. And so I think there's a huge pattern of distracting ourselves with, a bit like a magpie. It's like, oh, shiny.
Yeah, and I mean, it's shiny, right? They call it shiny object syndrome, where it's just, ooh, next thing, ooh, next thing. And when we boil it down, I think you're right. It's simply make a decision to act, and then take the action, right? Those are the two steps to anything.
Yeah.
And right, it's again, we can get as complex as all these different plans and action plans and this and that and guides, and it's just like, know what to do the thing. And often we know what to do because we have no lack of information, and because we know what to do usually for our goals. So it's the action step, it's the decisiveness that holds us back. Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to tell you about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. If you want to join hundreds of change seekers just like you and get free trainings, resources, and direct help from me in order to help make your quest for change easy, then click the link in the show notes that says Facebook group now. You'll be directed to my private Facebook group that I created just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever podcast app you're listening on right now. Okay, let's get back to the show. So in your experience working with clients, or just in your observation of people, what is it that is disconnected there? Because how can someone say, right, I want to make it to the end of the path,
and then not do it?
And then not do it, correct.
I've changed what I say I do, and I think this helps explain my answer, which is I help people lift their mind and spirit and believe it's possible. And so what I find when people are saying they can't see the woods for the trees, they're stuck in a rut, going around in circles, there's a degree of, I can't do it. And so I think where my processes come in is in enabling people to know. Somebody last week described it as, oh, my problem now feels solvable. And I think for me, I just went, oh my God, that's it. And because it's such a short sentence for what I think the process helps people do. Because when you're stuck, you don't know what to do. And so even if there's part of you going, oh, I know I should be doing that, you're not doing it. And you're not doing it because you're either in overwhelm, you're stressed. So the disconnect is in how we're feeling, I think. It's like the lack of resourcefulness, it might be overwhelm, it might be stress, it might be lack of confidence. And I think stripping back to who we are, because actually I also think the process that I use helps us connect in with our inner wisdom. But once we calm down, the common denominator with most people on coaching sessions with me will go, oh my God, that feels better. So it's the feeling first, then, oh, now I know what to do. Now I'll do it. I had somebody ring up, overwhelmed, deadline in 3 hours or whatever, really, really stressed. And I asked 3 or 4 questions about not being able to see the wood for the trees. But as soon as they felt better, as soon as they went, that's better, she said, I'm going, and hung up the phone, because the deadline was still 3 hours away, but she now knew what action to take and could take it.
So you mentioned just now a lot of this being about feeling, and you also mentioned the term inner wisdom, which I really like. I'd like you to expand on kind of those two things, because those seem like internal things where we're talking about the metaphors before of the forest for the trees, finishing the path, all of this stuff, going somewhere, acting. Like that seems like external stuff, but finding inner wisdom, working on our feelings, that seems like internal. So if our problem is external, how do we solve it with an internal solution?
The way I would describe inner wisdom is our unconscious. So going back to, and it's an analogy, not a metaphor, of the iceberg, is that we only get to see 10% of what's going on in our mind, and there's another 90% that we're not aware of. And that 90% is really wise and knows what to do and can speak to us in all sorts of ways, whether it's a feeling to do something, whether it's an intuition, whether it's just follow your behavior sometimes. It's like, why am I doing this? Because there's a part of you that you're not consciously aware of that thinks it's a good idea to step left, and something suddenly comes and would have run you over if you hadn't have stepped left. And I think more and more we're using the 10%. We're accessing the 10%. It's what we can see, it's what we can feel, it's what we can hear. And then there's another 90% that's got loads of wisdom and understanding and hasn't got the ego, in my words. So, somebody else might see it differently. But for me, the 10% has the ego. The 10% has the musts, oughts and shoulds. The 90% that we're unconscious of is wise, is kind, does the right things, knows what's good for us. And the logical brain talks more to the logic way of thinking talks more to that 10%. So we need to find a way to talk to the other 90%. And metaphor does that. I mean, meditation might do that. Mindfulness might do that. There's lots of different tools and techniques. But for me, metaphor does, because it goes to a innately, historic part of us that saw things in pictures and metaphors, not data.
Yeah, I agree. There's an inherent power in stories and metaphors, because before there was writing, there were stories, and stories are a part of us at a deep fundamental level. And I like the analogy of the iceberg. And like you said, the logical brain pays attention to that 10% that we can see. And to me, you used the word confidence before, which is something I talk about a lot, but I also use that word interchangeably with trust, because the reason that we like to pay attention to that 10% of the iceberg is because that's the part that we can see. And if I can see it, I can trust it. Yeah. So how do we start to trust ourselves to rely on that other 90% when it's out of our direct understanding?
I think it's just trying it. I had somebody yesterday on a workshop who I suspect normally sits in the 10% quite comfortably. And I said, I was just introducing, it was just a half-hour session on creative problem solving. And I said, think of a problem and draw it if it was a mountain. And afterwards, because the process is draw the mountain that depicts the problem, and then make changes to the mountain to solve it. And if you'd have asked him beforehand, is this process are you going to be able to draw the mountain? Are you going to be able to come up with solutions, and is it going to make you feel better? I think he'd have said, no, I'm just humouring her. But at the end, he went, one of his ahas for the day, session was, oh, I so love that drawing it. I'm going to do that more. So I think it's about finding tools and techniques like I have, I suppose, in terms of going out into nature and using that. But other people will, other people, it would be meditating. It might be automatic writing where you just keep writing and seeing what's coming out. That we'll all find a way of doing it. It's just testing it, trying it out, and then going, well, that worked that time. Let's see if it works again.
I 100% agree. I think that knowledge of self is what I call a meta skill. It's one of the things that just everything else will fall into place when you know yourself better, because exactly like you said, like for you, it's going out into nature. So someone might hear that and go, oh, well, nature is the answer. But some people don't like nature. I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you are the type of person, so maybe, and then someone will try that and they'll go, well, I heard Alison on this podcast and she said going out into nature is the answer, but I tried going out into nature and it didn't work for me. But that is the type of person that maybe needed to meditate or needed to journal or needed to do something else. And the only way you find that thing is figuring out what it is to you, because we are all unique. As much as we can talk about, this show is all about human nature, because there are certain things that all humans have in common. And yet, for as similar as we are all unique, special little snowflakes that have our own likes, our own dislikes, our own proclivities. So knowing that about yourself, just knowing what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, is a skill that will stay with you forever. So taking the time to figure that out is not something that we've ever been taught. We just follow a plan. We follow what's given to us. So I think that is something that is hugely impactful for people. And once you study yourself, once you figure yourself out, you can answer the deeper questions, but you can't get to the deeper stuff if you don't even know who you are. Right. So now that you know about you, what are some things that make you happy?
Well, it comes back to that question about what do I help people do? Because I thought it was that I was motivated by helping people get unstuck. And I realized it's not. It's the people feeling better. So I think it's that, But actually, what you've just said about helping people understand themselves more, it's like, I do that? Because yesterday, when I was if I look at what I got excited about in terms of the feedback I got at the end of the day, in terms of what have you learned, I think I get more excited. I'd get more excited about going, oh, I've learned that about me today. That would give my greatest joy, So yeah, and I suppose, in coaching sessions, the bit that really lights me up is asking that one question that did make the difference. It's that was a good question, and quite often, where did that come from? Because again, it's that inner wisdom going, ask this question, and logical mind's going, why on earth would you ask that question? It's like, but I've just learned, going back to your trust, I've learned to trust that if in a coaching session something comes in for me to ask it, I have to A, ask it, and B, ask it in the way it comes in. Because sometimes I can go, oh no, that's too rude or too blunt. If I was asked that question in that way, I'd get upset because I'm a little gentle, snowflake. Whereas I have asked people many a time to say, was that too blunt? Because to me, it feels blunt. And they go, no, I wouldn't have been able to hear it any other way. So for me, I get joy in that, honoring what comes in and then noticing the impact it has when it lands and the person gets the aha, really.
It's interesting, your answer to that question. Immediately you went into helping others and what you do as a coach and your work. And that's something that I found in most of the people that I talk to on this podcast, because I talk to coaches, therapists, healers in some way. And something that I've heard from someone else and I've co-opted as my own, that I say all the time now, is that healed people heal people. And all the people who find, whatever you want to call it, happiness, enlightenment, flourishing, getting unstuck, it's like, of course you want to share it. Nothing feels better than giving that to someone else. It's the same reason why someone who finds a diet that really works for them starts proselytizing it, like, you got to try this thing. It's like, no one cares about your stupid diet, but they feel good on it, and they assume that if other people do it, that they'll feel good on it. But I think it's interesting just for listeners, because I think a lot of people, when prompted like what would make you happy, would go into more money or a nicer car or being like, less debt or a better job or all these other things that are internal. But when you continue down this road of growth, we all come to the conclusion that giving feels better than receiving. It's not this like platitude or something like that, because that's why this podcast exists. That's why I have 300 episodes of just talking and trying to help people, because it's like, I just want it to be out there in the universe. I just want it to exist. I just want to put it out there, and I can talk about this stuff literally forever, and it will always make me happy. Just like how your face just lit up when we were talking about helping your clients. But I'm curious, when you work with clients, when you talk to family members, when you think about, again, I use these words interchangeable: happiness, flourishing, enlightenment, that next level, right? You talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And once all of the other needs are met, there's that top peak level, which is flourishing. What does that look like? Where do you try to get people? Like, what does a happy, flourishing human look like in your eyes?
Wow, that's a question and a half, isn't it? You see, the interesting thing is, because I help people get unstuck, I don't know that anybody's ever got there. And I always say that I'm not there along the path. So I'm there to get them out of the hole, to get them on the path, and then they'll find other teachers, other healers, other guides to guide them on the way. So I don't know that I ever do get somebody there. I don't know if that's a cop-out.
Well, it's fair. I mean, again, I don't know that anyone gets there, right? You talk about enlightenment. This is the Buddha sat under a tree for 49 days or something like that to reach enlightenment. And monks study in a cave in Tibet for their entire lives to theoretically reach enlightenment. So these are the hard questions. But I just mean, again, looking at life in the year 2024, there's so much that people theoretically want, and so many things vying for our attention all of the time. But when you really peel back the layers or dig a little bit deeper, it's like, what do people want? Just to be a little bit happier. And that's what I always want people to achieve, is just like, how do we move a little bit towards that? And like you said, if someone's in a hole, the first step is to get out of that hole. But another part is like, even if you're not the person to take them to the mountaintop, you don't reach the mountaintop without walking towards the mountaintop, right? We don't reach a destination that we didn't set out for. We don't accidentally hit a bullseye. If you just throw a dart at the wall and you're not aiming, you're not just accidentally going to hit that mark. You're going to just not even hit the board, and you're going to hit the wall. So when you're, again, could be for yourself, just thinking about like, what does that next level look like? Again, we get unstuck, but where should we be aiming our attention if our goal is to not just be in the rat race of society, and instead reach that level that all humans, I believe, are capable of being, again, just fulfilled?
Interestingly, I mean, I went for a swim in the sea a few hours ago, here in Scotland, so it was a bit chilly. But there was beautiful blue sky. It was really calm. The water was see-through, really. And there was just a sense of oneness. It was like no busyness, no... I mean, that's why I love swimming, because it is the one place where when I go there, because I don't tend to go when it's horrible weather, and my brain... And I now actually, as you asked this question, realise the reason I don't go swimming when it's cold and grey. I mean, it was frost on the ground today, so it's freezing out, but I'm quite happy because it's calm, because I'm able to not have any chatter in my head when it's blue sky, sparkle on the sea. Whereas when it's grey, I suspect I know that I have lots of chatter about this is cold and I don't like this. And so that's why I don't go swimming then, I think, because I'm not going swimming to swim. I'm not going swimming for exercise. I'm going for that sense of oneness, connection, not worrying about the meeting I've just had, coming on this call. All of that wasn't there, as I'm just there swimming with the sea. And actually, that also explains why I tend to not rush to arrange to go swimming with other people, because although it's a nice activity, it's not the activity that enables me to do that connecting. So I think there's, and I don't know that I know I haven't got there, but it's what some of the mindfulness people would say about being in the moment, in terms of if we're judging others, if we're worrying about things, we're worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or we're worrying about things that, yesterday's gone, tomorrow hasn't come yet. So it's the ability to be in the moment and not attach too much to my thoughts. I haven't got there, but that would be the aim, I think. The fact that, I'm getting agitated, but why am I getting agitated? Because I'm telling myself a story about something that hasn't happened yet. And actually half the time never happens. So I've had all this, chatter about, catastrophizing about things that never have happened.
Yeah. Good word, catastrophizing. I love that. And it's interesting. All of this stuff we've already talked about kind of intertwined there. Stories, knowledge of self. Knowing going swimming is not about the exercise. It's not about the community. It's literally just about being in the serene ocean and having no noise. But you have to know that about yourself, because someone else will go like, well, it's cold. Why would I go swimming when I could work out on the treadmill? I could go to the gym or something like that. And you're like, it's not like that. No. But I know myself, you know yourself. And then we have, I think that you summed it up so well there. It's that non-attachment to the past, to the future. And again, that is enlightenment. This is what Buddhists study for. This is what the Stoics spoke about. And so it's not easy. This goes into the category as everything else, easier said than done. But if you can do that, if you can live in the present moment, and that's when you start to see the reality. You get out of the woods, you're not so stuck in it, and you get to see the full picture of, as you said, this doesn't really matter. That thing that I'm so keyed up on, that thing that's going all over and over in my head, by tomorrow I won't remember it, or if I do, it's going to happen either way, and there's not much control that I have over it. So just finding your personal practice, whatever it is, mindfulness, meditation, journaling, swimming in the ocean, going out in nature. I do think there is something to be said for that, but just knowing yourself and knowing what that thing is for you that gets you back into the moment and reminds you, my problems are not that big. We think that every story we tell, like, this is it, this is the most important thing. It's like, nope, no one cares. That doesn't matter. It's going to be over by next week. Like, if you think about what's this problem going to be 6 months from now, you'll probably have forgotten that it ever existed. And so coming back to that is a very powerful tool. And so we've gone in a few different directions, but I always want to leave people with action steps. So the last question that I have for you is the same question that I ask every guest, which is just, if you had one action step that listeners can take right now, today, as soon as this episode ends, to start building habits towards their happier life, what would it be?
I'd say go out for a walk, make decisions about which direction to go, and to notice the sort of decision-making criteria that you was in process when you were doing what you were doing. So it's that, why did I choose that direction? Is it because it looks easier? Is it because there's a signpost telling me? Is it because I know that way? And I think that, and it comes back to what you said a few times about knowing ourselves more, that even when we're on a walk, we're taking ourselves on that walk. And therefore, if we stay conscious to those habits, we've then got more choice about, I always take the easier path. I had somebody the other week, for instance, who always took the path that didn't have a signpost. But that was such an insight for them about, oh, I need a job that's all about taking, new product development, new customers, not doing things that the client has ever done before. And it was a huge insight for him. So I think for me that it's that, because most people are going to be walking somewhere and most people are going to be having to decide whether they go left or right or straight on. So they don't have to be in nature. It can be in a street, but to just notice the pattern.
There is power in nature, and there is power in metaphor. And nature is, interestingly, a metaphor for life. By zooming out, you can start to see how all of these things are interchangeable with each other. So slow down and ask yourself, what's really going on? And if you're really seeing the whole picture, or if, as Alison said, you're missing the wood for the tree. Like Alison showed us, you'll find that altering your perspective is all you need to do to solve many of life's problems. That is change made easy. Make sure you connect to Alison on LinkedIn. I've linked to her page in the show notes, and you can learn all about what she's doing, her courses, her books, her podcasts, and more. Don't forget about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. Come join hundreds of change seekers just like you and receive free trainings, resources, and direct help from me that will help make your quest for change easy. Just go into the show notes of whatever app you're on right now and click the link that says Facebook group. You'll be directed to my private Facebook community that's just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever app you're listening on right now.